The starship Star Seeker drifted through the empty sector, its sensors sweeping the darkness of space. Captain Reed stood at the bridge's main window, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. Something felt wrong about this region. The readings didn't match any natural space phenomena he'd seen in his 30 years of service to the Galactic Council. "Captain, the gravitational readings are getting stranger," First Officer Blue said, her crystalline form catching the starlight as she moved to the sensor station. "It's as if space itself is being bent around something that our instruments say isn't there." Reed walked over to Blue's station, studying the complex pattern of numbers and waves on the screen. In all his years patrolling the border sectors, he'd never seen anything quite like this. The empty sector shouldn't have any significant mass to cause such distortions. The peace treaties after the human war had made sure of that. "Show me the visual overlay," Reed ordered, and the main screen lit up with a false color representation of the gravitational forces in the sector. What he saw made him catch his breath. The space before them wasn't empty at all. It was wrapping around something massive. Blue's crystalline fingers danced over the controls. "Sir, energy readings are beginning to spike. Whatever's out there, it's either waking up or dropping some kind of cloak." Reed felt a chill run down his spine as old memories surfaced. He had been a junior officer during the last days of the human war. He remembered the stories of how human ships would appear out of nowhere, strike with devastating force, and vanish again. The Council had dismissed those tales as exaggerations after the humans surrendered, but he had seen enough to know better. "All hands to battle stations," Reed commanded. "But keep weapons powered down. We don't want to appear hostile." The crew rushed to comply as warning lights bathed the bridge in a soft red glow. "Sir," Blue's voice carried a note of worry that made her crystal form vibrate slightly. "The distortion is expanding. It's now larger than any known Council vessel." The space in front of the Star Seeker began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot ground. At first, it was subtle, just a slight bending of the starlight. Then the distortion grew stronger, and something impossible began to take shape. It started with a nose section larger than Reed's entire ship, materializing as if being painted onto the fabric of space itself. The hull was midnight black, absorbing nearly all light that touched it. As more of the vessel revealed itself, Reed felt his mouth go dry. The ship was easily 5 times the size of the largest Council battlecruiser, its hull marked with strange patterns that seemed to shift and move in the starlight. "By the eternal stars," Blue whispered, her crystal form paling to a lighter shade. "That's a human warship, but it's not possible. They were all destroyed or surrendered 50 years ago." Reed knew exactly what they were seeing. Every Council captain had memorized the profiles of the legendary human vessels, studying them as examples of what to watch for. This was no ordinary warship. The distinctive arrow-shaped hull, the massive engine sections, the characteristic weapon ports along its flanks. This was the HMS Thunder, the most famous human warship never found after the war. Before Reed could give any orders, a communication request flashed on the main screen. For a moment, he hesitated. Opening communications with an illegal human warship could be seen as a violation of Council protocol, but refusing to answer might provoke a hostile response from a ship that clearly outgunned them. "Accept the transmission," Reed ordered, straightening his uniform. The screen flickered to life, showing a human male in a dark uniform that hadn't been seen in Council space for half a century. His face was stern but not hostile, his gray hair and bearing suggesting both age and authority. "This is Captain Marcus Stone of the HMS Thunder," the human said, his voice calm and measured. "I need to speak with the Galactic Council immediately. The future of every species in this galaxy depends on it." Reed exchanged glances with Blue, whose crystalline form had shifted to a deeper shade of her namesake color, a sign of deep concern among her people. They both knew that this moment would change everything. The peace that had lasted for 50 years, the careful balance of power, the Council's authority. It was all about to be challenged by a ghost from humanity's past. The old war veteran sat in his favorite corner of the council archives, his scaled skin reflecting the soft light as he spoke to a group of young officers. His name was Red, and 50 years ago, he had fought against the humans in the Great War. The young officers gathered around him were supposed to be studying council military history, but instead, they wanted to hear about the HMS Thunder. "You have to understand," Red said, his voice rough with age. "The humans weren't like any enemy we have faced before. They didn't fight like the council expected them to fight." The memory of that time rushed back to him like it was yesterday. The council fleet had been massive, thousands of ships strong, all lined up in perfect formation as they pushed toward Earth. They thought their numbers would overwhelm the humans easily. They were wrong. The human ships would appear from nowhere, Red continued, gesturing with his clawed hands. They used tricks we had never seen. Their ships could hide in plain sight, could move in ways that didn't make sense. And the Thunder, she was the worst of them all. One of the young officers, a cadet with bright purple skin, leaned forward. "But the records say all human warships were either destroyed or surrendered. How could the Thunder still be out there?" Red laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The records say what the council wants them to say. I was there during the final battle of New Mars. I saw the Thunder tear through our lines like they weren't even there. 300 council ships surrounded it. You know how many survived." The young officers shook their heads. 27. The Thunder destroyed or disabled the rest. Then, just when we thought we had it trapped, it vanished. Not destroyed, not surrendered, just gone, like a ghost in the night. The war had ended shortly after that. The remaining human forces surrendered, their colonies accepted council rule, and their military was disbanded. But Red and others who had fought in the war knew the truth. The humans had given up too easily. "The council made the humans sign treaties," Red said, pulling up an old holographic image showing the signing ceremony. "No more warships, no advanced weapons, no military research beyond what the council approved. The humans agreed to everything without arguing. That should have been our first clue." The image changed to show human shipyards being dismantled, weapons being destroyed, and military bases being converted to civilian use. Everything looked perfect on the surface. Too perfect. "Some of us tried to warn the council," Red continued. "We said the humans were too clever, too resourceful to give up everything. But the council was happy to believe they had won. They didn't want to hear about missing ships or hidden bases." A soft alert chimed, warning the young officers that their study period was almost over, but none of them moved to leave. "The Thunder wasn't just a warship," Red said, his voice dropping lower. "It was a symbol of everything the humans could do. Their best minds had worked on it in secret for years. It had technology we still don't understand today. Some say it could fold space itself, or slip between dimensions. Others say it carried weapons that could reshape matter or control gravity." The young officers exchanged nervous glances. Such technologies were still banned by council law, 50 years later. "But here's what really scared the council," Red said, leaning back in his chair. "The Thunder was just one ship that could match a fleet, and there were rumors of others like it, hidden away in secret places, waiting. The humans called them the Shadow Fleet." Another alert sounded, more insistent this time. The young officers reluctantly stood to leave, but Red wasn't finished. "Remember this," he said, his old eyes sharp with memory. "The humans didn't lose that war. They chose to end it. And somewhere out there, the Thunder is still waiting. The council likes to pretend it's just a story to scare children. But I know better. I've seen what it can do." As the officers filed out, Red turned to look through the archives window at the stars. Somewhere out there, he knew, the legend was real. And sooner or later, the Thunder would return. He just hoped the council would be ready when it did. What Red didn't know was that at that very moment, hundreds of light years away, Captain Reed and his crew were facing that very legend. The ghost ship had finally returned, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The bridge of the HMS Thunder was nothing like Captain Reed had imagined. Through the video link, he could see that it was surprisingly bright and open, not the dark, threatening command center he had expected. Captain Stone stood in its center, his white hair and lined face showing his age, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "I understand your concern, Captain Reed," Stone said, his voice calm and steady. "Finding us here violates at least 15 different peace treaties, but I assure you, we wouldn't have revealed ourselves without good reason." Blue's crystalline form shifted colors rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "Your ship shouldn't exist," she said. "All vessels of this class were accounted for 50 years ago." Stone smiled, but there was no humor in it. Were they? Or did the Council simply accept what they wanted to believe? He pressed a button, and suddenly new images appeared on the Star Seeker's screens. They showed other ships, dozens of them, all hidden in different parts of the galaxy using the same technology that had concealed the Thunder. Reed felt his throat go dry. Each of those ships was as powerful as the Thunder. If humans had kept this many ships hidden for 50 years, it meant the Council had never truly won the war at all. "We need to inform the Council immediately," Reed said, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is far beyond my authority to handle." "That's exactly what I'm asking for," Stone replied. "We need to speak to the full Council. All of them. Today." His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. The Star Seeker's crew watched in amazement as the Thunder began to move. Its massive hull shifted like liquid metal, panels realigning themselves in ways that defied normal engineering. The ship's true size became apparent as it turned. It was even larger than it had first appeared. "Our engines are spooling up for a jump to the Council headquarters," Stone announced. "Your ship is welcome to accompany us, Captain Reed. In fact, I insist. The Council will need to hear your account of finding us." Reed looked at Blue, who had turned a pale shade of her normal color. They both knew they had no real choice. If they refused, the Thunder could easily destroy them. If they tried to run, they wouldn't get far. And if they tried to fight, Reed pushed that thought away quickly. "We accept your invitation, Captain Stone," Reed said formally. "But I must ask, why now? Why reveal yourselves after hiding successfully for 50 years? Stone's expression grew grave. "Because time has run out, Captain. We've detected something approaching the galaxy. Something the Council's sensors missed because they weren't looking for it. Something that threatens every living being in this part of space." The Thunder's engines began to glow with a strange, shifting light that seemed to bend the space around it. Reed had never seen anything like it. The technology was far beyond anything the Council currently had. "Prepare for quantum wake," Stone warned. "Our drive system can be disorienting for those who haven't experienced it before." Before Reed could respond, space itself seemed to twist around both ships. The stars blurred and stretched in impossible ways. Reed felt a strange sensation, as if his body was being pulled in every direction at once, while staying perfectly still. When reality snapped back into focus, they were no longer in the empty sector. The massive form of the Council station filled their view, its ring-shaped structure rotating slowly against the backdrop of a bright nebula. In the distance, Reed could see other ships appearing, more human vessels, each emerging from its own hidden pocket of space. "Send the message, Captain Reed," Stone said quietly. "Tell them the Thunder has returned, and we bring news that will change everything. Tell them to gather every Council member, every representative. They need to know the truth about why we hid and what's coming for all of us." As Reed began transmitting the emergency signal to the Council station, he couldn't help but wonder if this was how the galaxy changed. Not with a war or a victory, but with the return of a ghost ship carrying a warning. The next few hours would either mark the beginning of a new alliance or the start of another war. Looking at Stone's face on the screen, Reed wasn't sure which outcome would be worse. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been this full. 200 species were represented, their forms filling the circular room with a riot of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others stood on specialized platforms, and a few existed as pure energy within containment spheres. All of them had dropped everything to answer this emergency summons. First, Speaker Green stood at the center platform, his plant-like form swaying gently as he watched more council members arrive. The massive view screen behind him showed the impossible sight that had brought them all here. The HMS Thunder, surrounded by a growing fleet of other human warships that shouldn't exist. "This is an outrage," shouted one of the council members, a being made of living metal. "The humans lied to us for 50 years. We should arrest them immediately." Captain Stone stood calmly on a smaller platform near the center, seemingly unaffected by the hostile looks directed his way. Captain Reed and First Officer Blue stood on another platform, there to confirm the Thunder's discovery. "The treaties were clear," Green said, his leaf-covered form rustling, as he turned to face Stone. "All human military vessels were to be surrendered or destroyed. You broke your word." "No," Stone replied, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "We kept our word in exactly the way it was written. The treaties said we would surrender or destroy all ships in active military service. These ships," he gestured to the screen behind him, "were officially decommissioned 1 hour before the treaty signing. They weren't in military service at that moment." A murmur ran through the chamber. It was the kind of technical loophole that humans were famous for finding. "That's hardly the point," said another council member, this one a creature of pure light. "You've been hiding a fleet that could threaten the entire council. How can we trust anything you say now?" Stone pressed a button on his platform. The view screen changed, showing something that made the entire chamber fall silent. It was a massive object, dark and angular, moving through the space between galaxies. Behind it were hundreds more just like it. "This is why we kept the fleet," Stone said into the silence. "These objects are approaching our galaxy. They're artificial constructs, each one larger than a solar system. We call them the Harvesters. They visit galaxies every million years or so, destroying any civilization advanced enough to threaten them." The chamber erupted in voices, but Stone continued speaking over them. "We discovered their approach 50 years ago, during the war. That's why we agreed to peace so easily. We needed the Council to focus on development and expansion, while we prepared in secret." "Impossible," Green said, but his voice shook slightly. "Our deep space monitors would have detected them." "Your monitors aren't advanced enough," Stone replied. "The Council's laws against military research have kept your detection technology at the same level for 50 years. We had to go beyond those limits to see them coming." Reed stepped forward on his platform. "I've seen the Thunder's technology myself. It's far beyond anything in Council space. If Captain Stone says these harvesters are real, I believe him." Blue's crystalline form pulsed with light as she added, "The sensor readings from our ship confirm that the Thunder possesses technology we can barely understand. If the humans have been preparing for a threat like this, we should listen." The chamber grew quiet as the council members looked at the screen, watching the dark shapes move steadily closer to their galaxy. The humans had broken the peace treaties, yes, but they had done it to protect everyone, including those who had tried to contain them. "How long do we have?" Green asked finally. 2 years, Stone answered. "Maybe less. We've been building up our forces, developing new technologies, preparing for this moment. But we can't face them alone. We need the Council's help." "And if we refuse?" asked the metal being who had spoken earlier. Stone's expression remained calm, but his eyes were hard. "Then humanity will fight alone, as we've planned to do if necessary. But consider this, if we were willing to hide our true strength for 50 years just to prepare for this threat, imagine what else we might be capable of." The chamber fell silent again as the council members looked at each other. They had just discovered that humanity had never truly been under their control. Now they had to decide, would they join forces with their former enemies, or face extinction alone. The fate of the galaxy hung on their answer. Stone's fingers moved across the control panel, and new images filled the council chamber's massive screen. The harvesters appeared in terrifying detail. Massive structures of dark metal and strange energy, each one built from the ruins of civilizations they had destroyed before. We first detected them when we were testing new sensor technology during the war, Stone explained. At first, we thought our instruments were wrong. Nothing could be that big, that advanced. But then we found the evidence in ancient ruins across the galaxy. The screen changed to show dead worlds. Planets stripped of all resources, their surfaces covered in strange geometric patterns. Some council members gasped as they recognized these worlds from their own exploration records. Your scientists marked these as natural phenomena, Stone continued. But look closer. He zoomed in on one of the patterns. These aren't random. They're mining patterns. Extraction points. The harvesters stripped these worlds clean during their last visit, 1,000,000 years ago. Blue moved her crystalline form closer to the screen, studying the patterns. These match ruins we found in the crystal sector, she said, her voice trembling. We always wondered what could have carved such precise lines into entire continents. Stone nodded. They're systematic. They harvest everything. Resources, technology, knowledge. Any civilization advanced enough to be useful becomes raw material for their fleet. The rest are simply erased. The council chamber was completely silent now. Even those who had been angry about the hidden human fleet were focused entirely on the images before them. Stone brought up a new display, showing the galaxy with thousands of points of light representing inhabited worlds. The Council's policies of limiting military technology had an unintended effect. Stone said, "You kept everyone at roughly the same level of development. To the harvesters, that makes our entire galaxy look like a perfectly ripened fruit, ready for harvest. Why didn't you tell us?" Green asked, his plant-like form trembling. Why keep this secret for 50 years? Stone's expression hardened. Would you have believed us? More importantly, would you have allowed us to prepare? Your response to any human military advancement was always the same: containment, restriction, control. He pressed another button, and the screen showed the Thunder's internal systems. Council members leaned forward, seeing technology that went far beyond anything they had imagined possible. Our ships can bend space itself, Stone explained. We've developed weapons that can unmake matter, shields that can absorb the energy of a dying sun. We had to go far beyond normal development to have any hope against the harvesters. And you did all this in secret? Asked a council member made of swirling gases. How? We had help, Stone replied, and brought up another image. This one showed a ship design unlike anything in the room. We found this in those ancient ruins, a database left behind by survivors of the last harvest. They hid it hoping someone would find it and be better prepared next time. We've spent 50 years learning from their knowledge, building on it, preparing for the harvester's return. Reed stepped forward on his platform. I've seen what the Thunder can do. If Captain Stone says these ships can fight the harvesters, I believe him. But they're right. They'll need our help. Stone nodded. The harvesters are coming with a fleet of thousands. We have hundreds of ships. Advanced as we are, we can't be everywhere at once. We need the Council's resources, your people, your worlds. We need everything you can give us if we're going to survive. The screen changed one final time, showing a simulation of the harvester fleet approaching the galaxy. The scale was almost impossible to grasp. Each ship was larger than a solar system, their combined mass enough to distort the very fabric of space. We hid ourselves because we had to, Stone said quietly. We broke the treaties because the alternative was extinction. Now we're offering everything we've learned, everything we've built. Not as conquered people following council law, but as equals fighting for survival. The council chamber remained silent as the simulation played out, showing the harvesters drawing ever closer to their galaxy. The choice before them was clear: accept that humanity had surpassed them, and work together, or face annihilation alone. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Hundreds of voices spoke at once, some shouting in anger, others crying in fear. The massive view screen still showed the Harvester fleet approaching their galaxy, a reminder of the doom hanging over them all. Order. Green's voice boomed through the chamber, his plant-like form growing larger to command attention. We must have order. The metal being who had spoken earlier rose on his platform. How do we know this isn't a human trick? They could have created these images to scare us into accepting their illegal fleet. Stone stood quietly, waiting for the noise to die down. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. Admiral West, he said into his communicator, you may proceed with the demonstration. The view screen shifted to show a view of empty space near the council station. Suddenly, the fabric of reality seemed to tear open. Through the tear came a ship even larger than the Thunder, its hull gleaming with strange lights and patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. The Star Forge, Stone said, our newest vessel, built using technology we learned from the ancient database. He nodded to someone off-screen, and the massive ship began to change. The council members watched in stunned silence as the Star Forge's hull shifted and flowed like liquid metal. Parts of it seemed to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist, revealing weapons and systems that defied understanding. Energy readings from the ship made the council station's sensors scream in protest. This ship, Stone continued, can rebuild itself from any damage, create its own ammunition from surrounding space, and tear holes in reality itself. And even with all this power, our simulations show it would take at least 3 ships like this to stop just one Harvester. Blue's crystalline form had shifted to a deep worried purple. The energy readings from that ship, they're beyond anything in our records. How did you hide this from us? The same way we hid everything else, Stone replied. By going where you wouldn't look, building in places you couldn't reach, and using technology you couldn't detect. First Speaker Green moved his platform closer to Stone's. His plant-like body had darkened with stress, leaves curling at the edges. If what you say is true, if these Harvesters are really coming, then we have no choice. But the Council will need guarantees. No, Stone said firmly. No more restrictions. No more controls. You need to understand. Humanity isn't asking for permission anymore. We're offering an alliance, but as equals. The chamber grew quiet as the council members realized what this meant. The balance of power had already shifted. The humans weren't revealing their fleet because they had to. They were revealing it because they chose to. And energy being floated forward. What exactly are you proposing, Captain Stone? Full integration of our technologies, joint training for our crews, immediate upgrading of council defense systems. Stone brought up a new display showing defense plans and ship designs. We have 2 years to prepare this galaxy for the biggest fight of its existence. We don't have time for politics or old fears. First Speaker Green was silent for a long moment, his leaves rustling as he thought. Finally, he spoke. A vote then. All members of the council will decide. But first, show us everything. No more secrets. Stone nodded and pressed a button on his console. The view screen filled with hundreds of new images. Hidden shipyards in fold space, weapon systems that could reshape planets, defense networks that spanned entire sectors. The true extent of human advancement was staggering. We built all of this to protect everyone, not just humanity, Stone said quietly. We could have left, taken our ships to another galaxy. But this is our home too. All we're asking is the chance to defend it together. The council members looked at each other, centuries of distrust and fear weighing against the evidence before them. The vote would change everything. Either accept humanity as equals and face the Harvesters together, or reject them and face extinction alone. Green raised his arms, leaves spreading wide. The council will now vote on humanity's proposal. Remember well, this decision will determine the fate of every living being in our galaxy. The voting began, and the future hung in the balance. The voting took less than an hour. In the end, Fear of the harvesters proved stronger than fear of humanity. When first Speaker Green announced the results, his leaves had turned a bright, hopeful shade of green-gold. "The council has decided," he announced, his voice carrying through the chamber. "With a vote of 187 in favor, we accept humanity's proposal for alliance." Captain Stone nodded, showing no surprise. Perhaps he had known all along how they would vote when faced with extinction. He pressed a control on his platform, and suddenly new ships began appearing around the council station. Dozens of them, then hundreds, each one emerging from its hidden pocket of folded space. "Admiral West," Stone said into his communicator, "you have permission to begin Phase 1. A new figure appeared on the main screen. A human woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, wearing a uniform that no one in the council had seen before. "Understood, Captain. Activating the network now." Suddenly, the space around the council station lit up with strange energies. Council members gasped as they saw what was happening. The human ships were creating something, working together in perfect coordination. Lines of force began connecting the vessels, forming patterns that seemed to twist through impossible dimensions. "What you're seeing," Stone explained, "is our defense grid being activated. We've had the framework hidden in subspace for decades, waiting for this moment. When it's complete, it will cover the entire galaxy." Blue's crystalline form sparkled with amazement as she studied the readings. "These energy patterns, they're rewriting the basic laws of physics in the protected space." "Exactly," Stone said. "The harvesters use normal space to travel. By changing the rules of space itself in key areas, we can control where they can and can't go, force them to fight where we choose, not where they want." The council members watched in awe as more ships appeared, each adding to the growing network of energy and light. The Starforge moved through the fleet, its impossible technology helping to anchor the defense grid in reality. First Speaker Green moved his platform next to Stone's. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked quietly. "Since the day we found the ancient database," Stone replied. "Everything. The surrender, the treaties, the hiding. It was all to prepare for this moment. We needed the council to keep the galaxy stable while we built our defenses. If we told you the truth then, there would have been panic, chaos. We couldn't risk it." A new alarm sounded, and Admiral West's image reappeared on the screen. "Captain, the long-range sensors are picking up something. The harvesters, they're accelerating. They must have detected the defense grid activation." Stone's expression hardened. "Then we have less time than we thought. First Speaker, we need to begin the integration immediately. Every council ship needs our shield upgrades. Every crew needs training on the new weapons. Every world needs planetary defense systems." Green looked out at the assembled council members. "We spent 50 years trying to contain humanity," he said. "Now they're our only hope for survival." He turned to Stone. "Tell us what you need. The full resources of the council are at your disposal." The chamber, which had been so full of fear and anger just hours before, now hummed with purpose. Council members began coordinating with human officers, sharing information and making plans. The Starforge opened its hangars, revealing training facilities and manufacturing centers that would help upgrade the council's forces. Stone watched it all with quiet satisfaction. "Captain Reed," he called out, and the council patrol ship captain moved his platform closer. "Your ship found us for a reason. How would you like to be the first council vessel upgraded with our technology?" Reed looked at Blue, who nodded eagerly. "It would be an honor," Reed replied. "Though I have to ask, did you let us find you?" Stone smiled, the first real smile anyone had seen from him. "Let's just say we knew the right person would find us when the time was right. Now we have a galaxy to prepare, and not much time to do it." As the council chamber bustled with activity, the defense grid continued to grow, spreading its protective web across space. Humanity had hidden their true power for 50 years, waiting for this moment. Now, finally, they could stop hiding and start fighting back. The harvesters were coming. But this time, the galaxy would be ready for them.